So I'm just going to offer you guys something right now. Let's do it together. It's a very simple breathing exercise, something you can take with you when you go. And we'll talk a little bit more about breathing later. So everyone go ahead and close your eyes. Take a normal breath. So this time push all your breath out. Push it to the bottom. Hold there. Breathe in. Fill up your lungs. Take another sip of air. Hold it. Breathe out. Push the air out. Push out more than you think you can get. Hold it. Breathe in. Hold at the top. Take another sip of air. Breathe out. Hold it. Push out a little more. Breathe in. Hold at the top. Sip in a little more. Let it go. Return to normal breathing. Keep your eyes closed for a second. And open your eyes. So that was a very short exercise. However, respiration is the same root word as inspiration. So that's the clue. The clue is in the language. You can control your own inspiration by becoming mindful of your respiration. So we'll talk a little bit more about breathing later. So what I'm about to go into for the rest of the time is pretty much the remedies, the very simple remedies and strategies that anyone can do. Most of these are completely free, or will cost you maybe a little investment here or there. And a lot of these are super conceptual, but it gives you a better understanding of how the human being was designed. I'm going to keep coming back to this. Human beings were designed to live a certain way. Our bodies are designed to work a certain way, to eat certain foods, to do certain things. So it's all going to come back to this holistic perspective of very simple, treat your body well, and your mental state gets well, wellness will surround you. The first concept is nature. That's it. You guys can go home now. Nature has all the answers you've been looking for. You can insert nature in here and have nature all around you out here, and that, in essence, is what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the time. Consider this. Human beings have a design. There is a pod of dolphins. Yes, TJ? Pod of whales, pod of dolphins. A herd of deer. An army of ants. I like this one. A murder of crows. Right? So who knows what human beings are designed to be in? Anybody? Tribe. We don't have to look that far back. Human beings are in a tribe. We're tribal. How does that make sense today? Well, community. So isolation is one of the major factors of depression. I want to read to you something from one of my resource books here. It's called The Depression Cure, the 6-Step Program to Beat Depression Without Drugs by Dr. Stephen Alardi, PhD. So I just want to read you some of these beautiful words about our nature. Isolation is a major risk factor for depression. Those who lack the benefit of meaningful social connection are highly prone to becoming depressed, especially in the face of severe life stress. And unfortunately, once a person starts experiencing depressive symptoms, they tend to withdraw even further from the world around them. This in turn exacerbates the depression, sparking a vicious downward cycle of illness and seclusion that often proves difficult to break. This part is one of my favorite paragraphs in the book. We are literally born to connect. The drive is etched deeply into our DNA. From the first moments of life, we crave the company of others. And it's not just for the food and protection they provide. Babies even need social contact to help regulate their breathing and heart rate. They're exquisitely attuned to the biological rhythms of those around them. It's not just babies. The ebbs and flows of respiration, heart rate, alertness, and so on. And they mimic these natural cadences to keep their own bodies in sync. That's one reason babies howl and protest when they're left alone. They instinctively know it's a recipe for biological disaster. Tribe. We are tribal, that's how we're designed. So, community is very important. Now, as outside, so inside. Something most people don't know is that we ourselves are a living ecosystem. So Darren is not, there's not just Darren sitting here. Darren is a living ecosystem of bacteria and yeast and human cells and microbes and tons of microorganisms. So here's one of the best books that I've ever had a chance to read. It's called Renegade Beauty. Now, it could be a women's book, but I don't think so. I think this is for everybody. Renegade Beauty. Reveal and revive your natural radiance by Nadine Artemis. Let's see. A tiny world flourishes in you. Of the 130 trillion cells in your body, only about 30 trillion of them are human cells. You play hospitable host to more than 100 trillion bacterial and fungal cells that have co-evolved with us and in us. Up to 3% of a human's weight is microbial mass. A microbiome is the microbes and their relationship with their host and with other microbes in a specific location or habitat. Your microbiome includes all of the various microbes that thrive in your gut, private parts, nose, mouth, and skin. So what happens in an ecosystem when it's unbalanced? It gets sick, right? You start polluting the river, what happens downstream, right? The fish die, the algae blooms. So when you start to consider yourself as a living ecosystem, and you start to treat yourself as a living ecosystem, not only feeding what the human wants, give me the sugar and the salt, but when you start to realize that there's a healthy living system on your skin, in your body, and you start to treat yourself that way by giving yourself the right things, then the whole organism flourishes because it's a symbiotic relationship. And so when you start to dump poison in things in there, like when you dump poison in a swamp and the algae blooms and the fish die, the same thing is happening to you. The third concept about nature is that nature itself is a healer. Outside spaces, forests, the natural places. There is a Japanese science called Shinrin-yoku, which translates as forest bathing. They actually put millions of dollars towards this every year to get people out into the forest because being in nature itself is a lifter of mood. So you can actually remedy one of the symptoms of your depression by interacting with natural spaces. In Western medicine, we call that, or Western science, they call that biophilia. By simply looking at trees and walking in the park, you can lift your mood. So there's a very simple thing that you can do. But that is number one, nature. I want to jump back a little bit now and touch on conventional thought. So again, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. The current paradigm suggests that there's a chemical imbalance in your brain and that can be fixed with a pill. So I'm just saying that that's what you're going to get from Western science. That's the way they would point you. Now that that's done, I'm going to tell you about the other stuff. So the chemical imbalance theory in the brain is just that. It's a theory. There is a great number of information, including this book here, Psychiatry Under the Influence, Institutional Corruption, Social Injury, and Prescriptions for Reform. It's written by a psychologist, Lisa Cosgrove, and an investigative journalist, Robert Whitaker. So the story of this book basically says the chemical imbalance thing was a theory they came up with in the 50s and 60s. They knew that it was BS by the 70s, and yet it still happens today because psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry are best buddies, and they really don't know anything else, and so it's a money-making machine, so they're going to keep saying that. Again, that's the Western medicine way, that's the official stuff, so if you want to believe that, that's fine. There is a whole wealth of information that says that is not true. I actually want to read you something just to touch on a few points. So this is a psychiatrist who has gone and seen the light. Her name is Dr. Kelly Brogan. She's got this amazing book tailored towards women, but again, I mean, the women are leading the way these days, so A Mind of Your Own, the truth about depression and how women can heal their bodies to reclaim their lives. She's also got a great free ebook on her website. So this is a psychiatrist saying this, not just me. Not just me. I am a great researcher and I have lived these things, I embody these things, but it's good to have a psychiatrist backing me up. I'm just going to touch on a few points. Psychiatrist. Depression is not a chemical imbalance. Number one. In 6 decades, not a single study has proven that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Let that sink in for a moment. It's the story that literally everyone has been told. It sounds official, medical, and even understandable that a complex cocktail of brain chemicals could go awry suddenly and permanently. So, psychiatrists say that. Number two, depression is often an inflammatory condition. So they're pretty much saying at this point, like anyone who's reading up on any modern medical stuff or anything that's in the new science, they're finding that almost all dis-ease, so break the word apart, dis-ease, not ease, is caused by inflammation. So we're going to go over all these ways that you can help with that. So it's mostly inflammation. 3, the side effects of antidepressants can do serious harm. So that's one of the reasons I'm up here today. It didn't have any kind of lasting effect on me, thank goodness, but after reading this book, I now know that it's a serious problem. A very serious problem. Especially because of the amount of antidepressants and other drugs that are being given to children and teenagers now. And so it can have major lasting effects on them. And there's a lot of proof that it can actually, there's a lot of things that are coming out now that are saying that people who weren't suicidal become suicidal after taking antidepressants. So you didn't have a chemical imbalance until you took the pharmaceutical.